In the heart of West Africa, a young soldier turned leader dared to challenge the financial empire that had chained his nation for over 6 decades. They called it the colonial franc, a currency designed to look like money, but in truth, it was a leash. One man decided to cut it, not with politics, but with gold. What happened next would shake Paris, terrify Washington, and inspire a continent. The night was quiet in Ouagadougou, but Captain Ibrahim Traore was still awake. In his study, maps of Africa lay scattered across a large oak desk. A single word was written in bold red ink on the top page: freedom. But he knew political freedom meant nothing without financial freedom. For decades, his country had used the CFA Franc, a currency controlled in Paris. On paper, it was money. In reality, it was a chain around Burkina Faso's neck. Every note carried the scent of dependency. Every coin whispered the name of a master thousands of miles away. Traoré had sworn to break that chain. He had read the history. In 1945, the French colonial franc was born. It was sold as a gift to African nations. But it was no gift. It was a leash, a brilliant, invisible form of control. France held the reserves. France set the value. France decided how much African money was worth. Any dream of independence was trapped in Parisian vaults. Traoré could not accept that. "We mine gold," he told his cabinet one night, "but we pay with paper we don't control." His voice was calm, but his words burned. "We feed the world, but we beg to buy bread." Ministers exchanged glances. They knew what he was implying. Replacing the CFA franc was considered impossible. Those who tried before had been overthrown, or worse. But Traoré was not the type to be frightened. He was a soldier first, a strategist second, a visionary always. He began to plan in absolute secrecy. His idea was simple but radical: a gold-backed currency for Burkina Faso. Not backed by Paris, not backed by the dollar, backed by their own gold. The country had gold reserves. The people had gold in the ground. The mines could provide the backbone of a new economy. "If money is trust," Traoré said, "then our gold is our signature." But such a move would not go unnoticed. The West had eyes everywhere. He needed to work faster than their reaction. Traoré assembled a small, loyal economic team. Economists, miners, bankers, and historians. No foreign consultants. No IMF experts. Just Burkinabe minds. They met in safe houses, not government buildings. Every discussion was face-to-face, no phones. Every plan was written by hand, then burned. Secrecy was survival. The world could not know until it was too late to stop it. First, they calculated the gold reserves. Then they measured how much currency could be backed by it. They designed new banknotes with African heroes, not colonial figures. Each note carried a small gold foil strip for authenticity. Security features were developed by local engineers. Printing presses were hidden in military facilities. The code name for the project, Ouagadougou Dawn, a symbol of a new sunrise. By month 3, the first prototypes were ready, but the risk was growing. French intelligence had picked up whispers. Foreign journalists began asking strange questions. The IMF called, offering urgent meetings. Traoré ignored them. He knew, the minute they suspected too much, they would try to crush it. The plan had to move from secret to reality overnight. One Friday evening, Traoré gathered his generals. He told them, "By Monday, the CFA franc will be history in Burkina Faso." The room fell silent. This was no longer theory. The next morning, military trucks carried the new gold-backed notes across the country. Banks received sealed crates at dawn. Instructions were clear. Switch currencies at 12:01 a.m. Monday. All CFA francs in circulation would be exchanged for the new currency. Citizens could bring their CFA notes to exchange centers guarded by soldiers. Miners cheered as they heard the news. Farmers danced in their fields. Some wept. They never thought they'd see the day. But not everyone was celebrating. In Paris, alarms were going off. The French Finance Ministry held an emergency meeting. "This is an act of economic rebellion," one official said. Others called it financial suicide. But no one could deny Traoré had caught them off guard. Calls flooded from Washington, Brussels, and London. Burkina Faso's phones rang endlessly. Traoré answered none of them. His focus was on his people. He appeared on national television. The nation held its breath. "Burkina Faso is free," he declared. His voice was steady, his eyes sharp. "We will never again be bound by a currency we do not control." Cheers erupted across villages, towns, and cities. "This money," he held up the new note, "is backed by our gold, our soil, our labor. It is ours." The announcement went viral. African leaders from Mali, Niger, and Guinea sent messages of support. The African street saw him as a hero. The Western press called him a dangerous populist. Within days, the value of the CFA franc dropped in the region. Investors scrambled to understand the move. Some predicted Burkina Faso would collapse. Others warned it might inspire a domino effect across Africa. Gold prices surged slightly as demand grew. The Burkinabe currency held steady, backed by solid reserves. In the markets of Ouagadougou, people proudly used the new notes. Shopkeepers framed the first bills they received. Children played with mock versions made of cardboard. It felt like a rebirth. But retaliation came quickly. France froze some Burkinabe assets abroad. Aid packages were suspended for review. International banks refused certain transactions. Media outlets began running fear campaigns. "Hyperinflation incoming," the headlines screamed. Traoré did not flinch. He doubled down, negotiating gold trade deals directly with non-Western nations. Russia, China, and Middle Eastern countries expressed interest. Africa was watching closely. Mali's leader called Traoré. Niger's junta reached out too. Talks began about a regional gold-backed currency. The West saw the danger, not just one country escaping the CFA franc, but several. Economic independence could mean political independence. That was unacceptable to them. But the fire had already been lit. Traoré's move had proved it was possible. The chain could be broken, and it could be done without begging for permission. In villages across Africa, people spoke his name. In universities, students studied his method. In markets, traders debated whether their own countries should follow. Burkina Faso's streets were alive with a new kind of pride. Money that truly belonged to them felt different in the hand. It had weight, not just physically, but historically. Every note was a reminder. We are not owned. Every coin was a statement. We decide. The youth wore T-shirts with the new currency's design. It became a cultural symbol. Western analysts kept predicting failure. Months passed. Inflation remained stable. Trade with new partners expanded. Burkina Faso began stockpiling more gold. Schools added lessons on economic sovereignty. Farmers received fairer prices for their goods. The mood of the nation shifted from survival to ambition. They were no longer asking, "What will Paris allow us to do?" They were asking, "What will we build next?" By year's end, Burkina Faso's growth rate had risen. The gold-backed currency was stable. The IMF was forced to publicly acknowledge its resilience. Traoré smiled when he heard that. "They said we couldn't," he told his advisors. "We just did." The victory wasn't just in numbers, it was in spirit. A nation had stood up and refused to kneel, and in doing so, it had become an example for millions. Across Africa, a quiet revolution was spreading. Mali officially began planning its own gold-backed currency. Niger considered joining them. Guinea's president openly praised Traoré's courage. West Africa was waking up. The CFA Franc's grip was loosening. France scrambled to maintain influence, but once people taste freedom, it is hard to chain them again. Traoré knew they would keep trying. He also knew he had already won the first battle, because the idea was now alive, and ideas, once alive, cannot be killed easily. In the halls of power in Paris, the question changed. No longer, can we stop him? But who's next? In Ouagadougou, the people celebrated their Independence Day like never before. Flags waved beside images of the gold-backed note. Children learned the history of the CFA Franc in schools. They learned how their parents had lived under it, and how they had broken free. The lesson was clear. Economic freedom is real freedom, and real freedom is worth any risk. Traoré stood on the balcony of the presidential palace. The city lights shimmered below. Somewhere in the night, drums played a victory rhythm. He thought of the generations to come. They would grow up never knowing the CFA Franc. They would inherit a nation that owned its money, and with that, its destiny. His work was not done, but it was begun. The gold-backed currency was no longer just a financial tool. It was a symbol of resistance. And symbols are powerful. They can inspire armies without guns. They can topple empires without wars. In the end, Traoré had done what many thought impossible. He had taken back the keys to his nation's economy. He had turned gold into freedom, and in doing so, he had shaken the world. Burkina Faso's story was now Africa's story. The chain had been broken, and the sound of its snapping could be heard across the globe.